Why avoiding pain keeps you stuck. Pain is one of the few experiences every human being shares. No matter who you are, life eventually confronts you with difficulty. Loss, failure, rejection, uncertainty, fear, and naturally, most people try to avoid these experiences. We distract ourselves. We numb ourselves. We postpone difficult conversations. We avoid uncomfortable truths. At first, this feels reasonable. Why willingly face pain when you could escape it? But there is a deeper problem. The pain you avoid does not disappear. It waits. And over time, avoidance creates a different kind of suffering. A quieter suffering, a stagnant life, a repeating cycle, a feeling of being emotionally stuck. Welcome to 10-Minute Books, the channel where we break down the world's most powerful books into practical lessons you can apply in everyday life. Today, we explore a profound idea reflected across 3 influential works: The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. Why avoiding pain keeps you stuck. M. Scott Peck begins The Road Less Traveled with a sentence that has become famous. Life is difficult. At first, this sounds pessimistic, but Peck argues the opposite. Once you accept that life contains difficulty, suffering becomes easier to navigate because resistance decreases. The real problem is not pain itself. It is the expectation that pain should not exist. When people believe life should always feel comfortable, every challenge feels abnormal. Every setback feels unfair. Every discomfort feels like failure. This creates resistance, and resistance intensifies suffering. Peck argues that growth requires confronting reality directly. Discipline, responsibility, truth. These are uncomfortable, but avoiding them delays development. The person who avoids difficult conversations never learns communication. The person who avoids rejection never develops confidence. The person who avoids failure never builds resilience. Avoidance protects comfort temporarily, but it weakens you long term. Viktor Frankl approaches suffering from an even deeper perspective. As a survivor of Nazi concentration camps, Frankl witnessed unimaginable pain, and yet he observed something remarkable. People could endure extraordinary suffering if they found meaning within it. Frankl argues that suffering without meaning creates despair, but suffering connected to purpose becomes bearable. This changes the role of pain entirely. Pain is no longer only something to escape. It becomes something that can shape character, clarify values, deepen perspective. Frankl does not glorify suffering. He does not suggest pain is inherently good, but he argues that avoiding all suffering is impossible. The question is not whether pain exists. The question is how you relate to it. Russ Harris brings this idea into modern psychology. In The Happiness Trap, he argues that modern culture teaches people to avoid discomfort at all costs. Negative emotions are treated as problems. Anxiety should disappear. Sadness should disappear. Fear should disappear. But this creates a paradox. The more desperately you try to eliminate discomfort, the more dominant it becomes. You become afraid of fear itself, anxious about anxiety, uncomfortable with discomfort. Harris explains that psychological flexibility is the solution. The ability to experience difficult emotions without being controlled by them. This does not mean enjoying pain. It means allowing discomfort without immediate escape. Together, these 3 books reveal a powerful truth. Avoidance creates stagnation because growth requires friction. Every meaningful transformation involves discomfort. Learning is uncomfortable. Honesty is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. But avoiding discomfort prevents growth. The first principle is acceptance. Peck argues that acceptance is the beginning of maturity, not passive resignation, but realistic acknowledgement. Life contains difficulty. Relationships are difficult. Work is difficult. Growth is difficult. Once this becomes accepted, energy shifts. Instead of resisting reality, you begin working with it. This reduces unnecessary suffering. The second principle is responsibility. Avoidance often disguises itself as external blame, circumstances, other people, bad luck. But responsibility changes perspective. It asks a different question. What can I control? What can I improve? This is uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it also creates power because responsibility creates agency. The third principle is emotional tolerance. Most avoidance behaviors are attempts to escape feeling, scrolling endlessly, constant distraction, overworking, numbing behaviors. These reduce discomfort temporarily, but they also reduce awareness. Harris argues that emotional tolerance must be developed. The ability to feel discomfort without immediate reaction. This creates freedom, because you are no longer controlled by emotion. The fourth principle is meaning. Frankl observed that meaning changes suffering. Pain connected to purpose feels different from meaningless pain. A difficult workout feels different from random exhaustion. Sacrifice for someone you love feels different from pointless struggle. Meaning transforms experience. This is why purpose matters. Without purpose, pain feels empty. With purpose, pain becomes part of growth. The fifth principle is truth. Avoidance often involves denial, ignoring problems, avoiding conversations, refusing self-reflection. But truth creates clarity, even painful truth. Peck emphasizes honesty as a form of discipline, facing reality directly, without distortion, without avoidance. This creates long-term stability, because what is ignored rarely disappears. The sixth principle is delayed gratification. Avoidance seeks immediate comfort. Growth often requires temporary discomfort for long-term improvement. This applies everywhere: health, relationships, career, self-development. The willingness to tolerate short-term difficulty creates future freedom. The unwillingness to tolerate discomfort creates future limitation. The seventh principle is identity. People often define themselves by avoidance. I am anxious. I am not confident. I cannot handle pressure. These identities become self-reinforcing. Harris emphasizes separating yourself from thoughts and emotions. You are experiencing fear. You are not fear itself. This creates space for action, even when discomfort exists. The eighth principle is courage. Courage is often misunderstood. It is not absence of fear. It is action despite fear. Frankl saw this repeatedly. Meaningful action in difficult conditions. Peck describes courage as willingness to face reality. Harris describes it as willingness to experience discomfort in service of values. Different language, same principle. The ninth principle is repetition. Growth is rarely dramatic. It is gradual exposure to discomfort. Small, difficult conversations. Small acts of discipline. Small moments of honesty. Repeated over time, this builds resilience. Avoidance weakens resilience. Exposure strengthens it. The 10th principle is transformation. Pain changes people. The only question is whether the change becomes conscious. Avoided pain creates bitterness. Faced pain creates wisdom. Avoided fear creates limitation. Faced fear creates confidence. Avoided truth creates confusion. Faced truth creates clarity. This is why avoiding pain keeps people stuck, because the very experiences they avoid contain the possibility of transformation. There is also a deeper modern problem. Comfort has become a cultural goal. Convenience, ease, constant stimulation. But comfort alone does not create fulfillment. In fact, excessive comfort often creates fragility. Small difficulties feel overwhelming because tolerance has decreased. Peck would argue that discipline counters this. Frankl would argue that meaning counters this. Harris would argue that acceptance counters this. Together, they point toward the same insight. A meaningful life is not pain-free. It is psychologically flexible, emotionally resilient, purpose-driven. Another important insight is that avoidance narrows life. The more discomfort you avoid, the smaller your world becomes. You avoid conversations, then opportunities, then risks. Eventually, avoidance becomes identity. But each time you face discomfort voluntarily, your world expands. You realize you can survive difficult emotions. You realize fear passes. You realize discomfort is temporary. This changes confidence. Not confidence based on certainty, but confidence based on capacity, the belief that you can handle difficulty. And this may be the deepest transformation of all. You stop organizing life around comfort and start organizing it around meaning. This changes decisions. It changes priorities. It changes identity, because comfort rarely creates growth, but difficulty often does. That does not mean seeking suffering unnecessarily. It means understanding that pain is sometimes the cost of becoming stronger, of becoming wiser, of becoming more fully yourself. The question then becomes, what discomfort are you avoiding? What conversation? What truth? What decision? Because often, the path you avoid most intensely is the one containing the growth you need most. That was Why Avoiding Pain Keeps You Stuck, explored through The Road Less Traveled, Man's Search for Meaning, and The Happiness Trap. Which idea resonated most with you? Acceptance, meaning, or emotional tolerance? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe to 10-Minute Books, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into powerful ideas. Because growth rarely happens in comfort. It happens when you are willing to face what you would rather avoid.